This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
Cam Johnson, University of North Carolina, small forward. I'd like to give a shout out to my family. My favorite thing to do on the court in general is shoot. Like I always say, 3 points is worth more than 2. So if you can shoot a shot and get 3 points, why not do it? And that's kind of something that I've lived by over the past couple of years. But shooting threes is definitely my go-to. One thing I'm working on a lot now is just my body, quickness, speed, strength, all-around stuff. I think that can help me a lot defensively, rebounding and moving with and without the ball on offense. My greatest accomplishment in basketball so far, I guess, would just be getting to this point now. Getting to this point where I'm in a position to kind of change my life a little bit now. My favorite basketball player growing up was Michael Jordan. I used to watch hours and hours of Michael Jordan games and videos all day long when I was little. And I tried to catch as many games live as his as I could at a very young age, and he's just always been my favorite player since. I think it was his competitiveness. He got a special gift that no other basketball player has. He's the greatest basketball player of all time, and I really respect that. But I can only imagine that it would be just a rush of emotions, something just unbelievable, something that you've been dreaming for your whole entire life. I dreamed of that moment every time I've watched NFL drafts, NBA draft. You always dream of your phone ringing and picking it up and a team on the other line saying they're going to pick you. So I haven't experienced it yet, but I can only imagine that the feeling is like no other.
The 11th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Phoenix Suns select Cameron Johnson from the University of North Carolina.
Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. It's official. James Jones has a fetish for shooters. It's something we found out tonight. Makes a lot of sense. He was a shooter in the NBA, and he likes shooters in the NBA. The 2019 draft just ended, and what a bizarre day for the Phoenix Suns and for the NBA in general. It's hard to even keep track of where all these players are going, who had what pick, and what ended up where. I'm thoroughly confused, but I took enough notes to actually get through this podcast. And of course, with me is Sam Cooper. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm thoroughly confused, Mike. I'm upset. But I'm going to keep a level head here, and I'm going to be quiet because it's past 11 p.m. on the East Coast, and I have people in this household that I don't want to wake up with my shrill screaming. So I'm going to try to be as rational as possible, even though I'm definitely confused by what the fuck just happened.
Yes, it was confusing for many reasons, but exciting at times. I was a little let down at other times. Let's just say that. So let's go chronologically, just recap what went down tonight, and then let's go through each of them individually and talk about how we feel about each individual move. Sound good?
Yep.
Adrian Wojnarowski, what a night for him. Very, very busy. On the actual telecast tonight, I didn't expect him to be there. Somehow still tweeting and talking about each pick as it happened. Initially reported the first move that the Suns made. This was all before the draft. This was about 3:30 in Phoenix, and the draft started about 4. First pick around 4:30. He tweeted out that TJ Warren has finally been moved. TJ Warren was traded to Indiana, along with the 32nd pick for cap space, basically. Cash considerations, as they call it. That means it's likely Indiana will be sending money back to the Suns, and the Suns will end up with the cap space that getting rid of the TJ Warren contract frees up. The next thing that happened, the draft was about to start, or actually had started, and the Suns traded the number 6 pick to Minnesota for Dario Saric, a power forward, actual power forward, Sam, and the 11th pick. And then the Suns took Cam Johnson, shocking literally everyone. Everyone watching, everyone there, anyone online. Nobody had him going this high, and the Suns still took him, a shooter, and we'll talk about him in a second. And then the final move was the Suns trading back into the draft, since they gave up the 32nd pick, back into the first round by giving up the Milwaukee pick, which went to Boston, who actually got the 24th pick from Philadelphia. You could see why this was confusing. And the Suns used that to take Ty Jerome. Minutes later, Shams Charania reported that Aron Baynes was also included in that trade. So basically, the Phoenix Suns gave up that Milwaukee pick, and the Boston Celtics gave back Ty Jerome and Aron Baynes, and the Boston Celtics gained some cap space by getting rid of Aron Baynes. Some cap space that maybe the Phoenix Suns could have used. There's a lot of thoughts that, of course, Sam and I are going to have. Let's start from the very top. TJ Warren is no longer a Phoenix Sun, and the Suns gave up an asset with him, a second-round pick, a high second-round pick. How do you feel about that, Sam?
It's unfortunate because I think, the Suns had no leverage going into this situation. First of all, I'm going to continue to root for TJ Warren wherever he goes. I'm going to miss him as a Phoenix Sun. I don't think he always got the respect that he deserved. Just giving up the 32nd pick there fucking sucks. It's really the type of trade where Josh Jackson, you understand if he doesn't have any trade value, but for a guy like TJ Warren, who's on a good contract and is quite clearly a very more than capable offensive player, even if he does have defensive limitations, you hope to get some sort of asset in return. It doesn't have to be an asset that would count against the Suns' cap sheet this year. It didn't have to be a late first-round pick or second-round pick this year. But, hopefully, I was hoping they would get some sort of future asset for him. Instead, they gave up the 32nd pick, which they could have used. The second round is still going on right now, but the 32nd pick, they could have used Grant Williams is still on the board right now. The Suns could have a solid power forward like Grant Williams, as opposed to the guy they actually took at number 11 in Cam Johnson, who they're going to try to play at the 4, but he won't be capable of playing it. So that right there is the first sort of unfortunate event of the evening.
Let's talk a little bit about...
Actually, Mike, I just want to correct myself really quickly. I think I was in such a blind rage towards the end of the first round that I wasn't noticing who was coming off the board anymore. Grant Williams was taken 22nd. So just to correct what I said a second ago. But regardless, there were still other prospects that could have been on the board 32 for Phoenix. I'm lukewarm on that trade at best.
Yeah, the Celtics will take anyone at any place. Does not matter what the general consensus about a player is, taking Grant Williams at high. Not a surprise to a lot of NBA Twitter, but not where a lot of the conventional wisdom expected him to be taken. And it kind of reminds me of what the Suns did tonight, and we'll find out in the next year or two if that pans out. But let's talk a little bit about TJ Warren. TJ Warren was a late lottery pick for the Phoenix Suns. He played basically 5 years here, but if you add all the games together, about 2.5 seasons because of his weird injury history. And there were basically no seasons where he played anywhere less than 17 games, less than a full season, essentially. He consistently was hurt, had trouble staying on the court. Up and down offensive production. Of course, we know we've well documented on this podcast his shooting and how differently that's changed over the course of a season. And I'll just go through his 5 seasons here. 23%, 40%, 26%, 22%, and then 43% from 3. That was a bizarre up and down of TJ Warren's three-point percentage. He has essentially been the name that has popped up the most as a potential trade piece for the Phoenix Suns over the last few years. And one of the reasons he was brought up is the expectation that he actually had some value on the trade market, and it turns out that the Suns had to actually attach an asset to get rid of him. Very difficult to watch and very unfortunate that we had to do that, just as you sort of broke down for us there, Sam. But how do you feel about TJ Warren's time with the Phoenix Suns? Well, how do you think he's going to be remembered here?
He won't be remembered. I mean, why would he be? The Suns haven't made the playoffs in the past several years. Yeah. They were in the gutter. He has no reason to be remembered. I hope he can go and find success on what should be a good team next year in Indiana. A team that had a good draft tonight, by the way. They got Goga Bitadze 18th overall, I think. I should be double checking these things, but a guy who I know a lot of people had top 10 in their big board. So between that and the TJ pick, I think they did a really good job.
Yeah, I think they definitely had an interesting draft, and I think TJ Warren could be a good fit, but who knows what his 3-point percentage will be next season. Based on the up and down trajectory of his career, it could be in the 20s. We don't actually know what it's going to be. We should talk about the other part of that. That is, the number 6 pick was traded to Minnesota for Dario Saric. That's the second trade here. Now, this is actually, I think, where it starts getting really interesting for the Suns. Not a lot interesting about getting rid of a player and just getting cap space back. But there is something interesting about trying to fill a hole, and that is the power forward hole that you and I have been talking about on this podcast for a very long time. And we're attempting to fill that with Dario Saric. So let's talk a little bit about Dario Saric first. Dario Saric, Croatian again, another Croatian player. An interesting prospect, someone who was sort of a playmaking forward for the Philadelphia 76ers, was traded to Minnesota and now is with the Phoenix Suns. Super Dario, as they call him. How do you feel about Dario Saric?
Well, make no mistake, Dario is the T-Wolves TJ Warren. You weren't going to get a superstar, not a superstar prospect, but you weren't going to get a player that is beloved by the Timberwolves organization like a Robert Covington for TJ Warren. You were going to get a player that fan base is clamoring to have Dario be traded for salary purposes as much as we were clamoring to have TJ traded. So I think what Dario does is he fills a couple of holes that the Suns have just a little bit better than TJ would, particularly rebounding. Dario last season got 8.2 rebounds per 36. TJ only gave us 4.6, so that's a huge difference. And Dario's 2.5 offensive rebounds per 36 would have been highest on our roster by far after the two centers in DeAndre Ayton and Rashawn Holmes. I mean, he's way ahead of Kelly Oubre, Dragan Bender, Josh Jackson in terms of offensive rebounding. The other thing that he does, obviously, is he shoots. 37% on catch and shoot threes this season, 41% on catch and shoot threes the season before. But on the other hand, that's TJ gave us that too. So overall, I would say, Dario's a good offensive player, but again, he has defensive limitations. He makes our rebounding a little bit better. He's a little bit better of a playmaker than TJ Warren is. But, he's not just the bucket getter that TJ is. He doesn't have the same instinctual feel on offense. I think he's not the same type of player in transition at all. So, he is what it is. He is what he is. And I don't know, I guess at the very least, you can say that we have a natural power forward on the roster.
When James Jones and Monty Williams have been talking about the players that they want to fill the Phoenix Suns roster with, they did not sound like TJ Warren. I have to say that for sure. What they said they wanted is they wanted players who make quick decisions. They wanted players that either pass, shoot, or drive, essentially, as soon as they catch the ball. They don't want players to take their time to figure out what's happening. They want players that'll move the ball immediately. They want to create basically a Spurs type of system, the beautiful basketball that we talked about on a previous podcast. TJ Warren didn't do that. TJ Warren would forget plays. TJ Warren would potentially get tunnel vision. TJ Warren was one of the worst passers I've ever seen while driving. And not to say that he threw the ball away a lot. It's just that he just wouldn't pass at all. Kobe Bryant levels of not passing at times. And I think Dario Saric, well, he doesn't have like this insanely high assist percentage or insanely high rebound percentage, another problem that we had in the power forward position. What he does do is make quick decisions. He's the type of player that can actually catch the ball and quickly make a decision to drive, pass, or shoot. I think that's the type of player that James Jones wants on this team, and I think that's what Monty Williams wants as well. And I think that's the main difference between TJ Warren and Dario Saric.
Okay, but here's the problem. Dario can hit a three, and he's better at rebounding and passing for sure. But the Suns, they acquired, 4 players tonight? And they still only have 2 players on the entire roster that can really create their own offense out of the perimeter. DeAndre Ayton obviously can create for himself in the post, but Devin Booker and to an extent Kelly Oubre are still the only players on this roster that can create their own offense. Dario is very much going to be reliant on someone else feeding him. He's an underrated pick and roll finisher too, something else I wanted to mention. He finished 86th percentile in efficiency as a pick and roll finisher this year, in addition to being the spot up threat. But, quick decisions, I don't know. I mean, I just don't want to overrate, the offensive impact that he's going to have. I think he's going to have a similar offensive impact to TJ, the main difference being a couple extra rebounds a game.
See, I don't know about that. And maybe it's just because TJ Warren was a very frustrating player for me to watch in the last season and a half, 2 seasons. Even with his increase in 3-point percentage, so often the ball just stopped with him in a Carmelo-like way that just frustrated me. And I just don't see Dario Saric as that type of player. It remains to be seen, of course. But to your point, you're right. We are losing a player that could create his own shot in isolation. The problem is his inability to work within any other type of offense, even when that 3-point shot is dropping for TJ Warren. I am going to miss him. I think he was a nice guy. I think he was a good player. I admire his ability to drastically change his shot this late in his career. That's just unheard of. It rarely ever happens. But I am kind of excited to see the type of impact that Dario Saric will have in just understanding the offensive flow in a way that I don't think TJ Warren did. There were so many times that I saw people telling him what the play was or where to stand on offense in a way that a fifth-year player shouldn't forget, in my opinion. And I don't know, maybe Dario Saric is like that. I'll be honest, I didn't watch a ton of Minnesota. I did watch him a little bit more when he was on Philadelphia, and I was a big fan. But I didn't have a chance to watch him much in Minnesota. But that 6th pick didn't just get Dario Saric back. It also got Cam Johnson. This is the most bizarre thing. We should first talk about the 6th pick. So as the draft was going, so as that TJ Warren trade happened, here's what I'll say first. I thought, okay, cool. All right, maybe we're making some cap space to sign a player like D'Angelo Russell, have enough money to potentially go for a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, although there are concerns there. You should watch our YouTube video if you haven't seen it already to hear about how we feel when it comes to Malcolm Brogdon. And I thought, okay, this is going well. Now we have the 11th pick. We can get Brandon Clark. We can come away with Dario Saric and Brandon Clark for the 6th pick. That's pretty good. I'd be really excited about that. And then the 6th pick actually came, and Jarrett Culver was still available, something that I didn't anticipate happening. Part of me thought the reason that they were trading the pick was because they anticipated Jarrett Culver not being available at that pick. What do you think, Sam?
Oh, I was so excited when Jarrett Culver was on the board at 6. I mean, he was my, number one guy. I love Brandon Clark, to be clear, but Jarrett Culver was my number one guy coming in at 6. This was just a draft where it was so clear that the Suns had so many needs that it wasn't even necessary to consider fit at all, because all of the guys in the number 6 range fit the Suns in some sense to begin with. Whether you wanted Brandon Clark, whether you wanted Kobe White or Darius Garland, or DeAndre Hunter or Jarrett Culver, they all fit our needs because we're bad at basically everything. So I was super excited about the prospect of maybe getting Culver obviously we wouldn't have been able to get Culver at 6. I should say I was a little disappointed when I realized we couldn't get Culver at 6. Right. I was still thinking leading into the 11th pick that if you took Brandon Clark, and to be honest, I was even thinking, hey, it doesn't even just have to be Brandon Clark. If you take PJ Washington, this still works. You could still stagger him at power forward with Dario. I was even thinking you could swing for, more of a long-term project like Sekou. And in the end, they did none of those things and disappointed me far more than I thought they ever could.
Before today, how much thought have you put into the idea of Cam Johnson?
Zero. It wasn't a consideration. I mean, the NBA invited 22 guys to the green room, and Cam Johnson was not one of those 22 players, and he was selected 11th.
It's just bizarre. So Cam Johnson, for those who don't know, he's a 5th-year senior. He went to North Carolina, played with Kobe White, actually, and he's widely considered the best shooter in the draft. He's 6'9", so he's tall. It's rare that a player that tall is considered the best shooter in the draft, by the way, and I think that's what impressed James Jones, is like looking in a mirror for him, basically, when looking at Cam Johnson.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. It's kind of like when Michael Carter Williams went to be coached by Jason Kidd. Yeah. And everyone was like, oh, he'll turn him into a new Jason Kidd. No, it doesn't really work like that. It just doesn't really work like that. Those types of skills are rare. And it's not to say that Cam Johnson won't be a good NBA player. Shooting is a very important skill in the NBA, and shooting with size is one of the most rare things that you can find. He's just not the type of player that should be projected that high. I understand when you look at a player and you're a front office and you say, well, this is our guy. This is the guy we want. We don't believe in this draft. We think that some of these guys in the top are overhyped, and we've found this player that fits exactly what we're looking for in the type of player that we want to play with in the modern NBA, and we want to get that guy. And to their credit, they still traded back and were able to find a veteran power forward to help slot into that starting lineup with the Suns next season. But Cam Johnson, in most mock drafts, was in the 20s or 30s. This is a massive reach for a guy like Cam Johnson, and it seems like the waste of a number 6 pick to start with, but even after that trade went down, the waste of an 11th pick. It seemed like there had to have been teams that were looking to move up to that 11th pick that you could move back, but maybe there weren't. Maybe that's how flattened this draft was after that 4th or 5th pick.
There's no way to sugarcoat this. In my opinion, it's a disaster. And this is not an indictment on Cameron Johnson. I'm still going to root for him as long as he wears a Phoenix Suns uniform. But I got to give credit to Alessandro Cosi on Twitter, who said, the Grizzlies won 33 games this year and were able to draft Ja Morant and Brandon Clark. The Suns won 19 games and ended up with Cameron Johnson, a guy that, as you said, most people had, in the 20s or 30s on their big boards. And there's just no way to come out of that without admitting that that's just a blatant failure. And here's why it's a blatant failure. People will say the Suns need shooting, and that's true. Cameron Johnson is a phenomenal shooter. 97th percentile on spot-up efficiency at the NCAA level, shot 46% on NBA threes. But here's the problem. When you select the oldest player, literally the oldest prospect eligible for the draft at 23 years old, and all he can do is shoot, it makes sense to make that kind of selection of a player who can only shoot when it was Devin Booker and they were 18 years old, the youngest player in the draft, and you were projecting other skills to come along. That's worth a lottery pick. But a 23-year-old prospect where all he can do is shoot, he can't create for himself off the dribble. He has major defensive limitations, doesn't have a plus wingspan, or at least not by, I think he doesn't have a plus wingspan at all. These are all major issues. I mean, for the Suns, a guy like Dylan Windler was taken 26th. They could have had him at 24th with that pick where they took Ty Jerome. Dylan Windler out of Belmont, another 4-year senior who has a phenomenal track record as a spot-up shooter and is a 6'8 forward. If they really wanted the shooting that badly, I think, first of all, they maybe could have gotten Cameron Johnson at 24, but they could have taken a guy like Windler there. And there's no reason to take a guy where his only skill set is being basically your kind of Troy Daniels replacement, but a couple extra inches of height. There's no reason to take that at 11. None.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Now, I will say I'm a little higher on Cameron Johnson than you. I think it's a little weird when where they're drafting him at this point. If they're planning on keeping Mikal Bridges, if they're planning on keeping Kelly Oubre, then we're going to assume that he's going to play power forward. He's 6'9", he's relatively skinny, doesn't have very long arms, and that means that the idea is that he could potentially play next to DeAndre Ayton, next to Aaron Baynes, who we're going to talk about in a minute, and spread the floor for guys at that position, and he's going to be outmatched. Even as a guy who's a fifth-year senior, he's older than Devin Booker. He's going to be one of the oldest players on the Phoenix Suns roster next season, and that's as a rookie. And he's still going to be outmatched defensively at the position that they're likely going to play him at. And that's a little unfortunate for him. I think he can contribute right away. He's the type of guy that's played long enough that he's going to be good his first day in the NBA, as far as, not exactly like a starter, likely going to be a bench player that contributes on the offensive side of the ball immediately. He is the type of guy who is a fast decision maker. He is all of those things that we described James Jones and Monty Williams wanting. A guy who can make quick decisions, a guy who can score. They want him to score at 3 levels. He's not exactly a great guy off bounce. He can shoot, he can fake, he can drive, but he's not exactly a guy who's going to finish. He's not overly athletic. He is a good off-ball cutter. He's a guy that can get open off the ball with Devin Booker carrying the load offensively and handling the ball. But he's not exactly a guy who's going to be able to create for himself. It's just another problem that we talked about getting rid of TJ Warren. And I think he will be able to contribute, but it's such a reach. I don't really know how to feel about it, especially with a guy like Brandon Clark. It was kind of the funniest thing to experience this on NBA Twitter, the way that we were able to experience it this year, because Suns fans were a big fan of Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark was, of course, the advanced stats darling and big NBA Twitter guy, a guy who is just essentially a guarantee to be good at the NBA level. I put it on Wasserman, recently about whether or not he thought Cam Reddish or Brandon Clark was going to be better, and he struggled talking about that, and Cam Reddish was taken at 10th. So, it's just difficult to understand why he went as late as he did, and why we picked Cam Johnson. I don't really know what else to say about Cam.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with what you said a minute ago, that Cam's going to be he's going to make an instant contribution, for sure. I think it's 3 years from now where maybe we're seeing Jared Culver averaging 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game as some team's secondary playmaker, and Cameron Johnson is an 8-point per game shooter off the bench. That we're going to feel the effects, but I don't think it's the type of thing that's going to be immediately apparent in year one.
I guess the advantage for Cam Johnson is we're going to know his ceiling because he's going to reach it next year.
Yikes. Yikes.
He's 23. He's 23.
Bother me with Brandon Clark. I mean, Brandon Clark, I recognize the lack of ceiling, but he just is such a good defensive basketball player that it didn't matter. But here, and the other thing we didn't even mention is, actually, this is important to mention. Cameron Johnson was apparently slipped in the draft because he was red flagged by a lot of teams' training staffs for hip issues.
Yes.
You know who recently fired their training staff? And a lot of people said, well, what's the big deal? What does a training staff do for you anyway? Aaron Nelson, not just fired. Aaron Nelson also left the Suns to go to the Pelicans instead. I don't know, first of all, that we've gotten any information about who the Suns' new training staff is.
No.
But they were willing to take a gamble on a prospect that a lot of other teams were not willing to take a gamble on. And I wonder if that reflects on the quality of our new training staff.
Yeah, I would say that it likely does. And hip injuries are not something to balk at. That's basically what ended Isaiah Thomas's career at this point. It's something that has affected him dramatically. At the very best, what you can hope for Cam Johnson is a 6'9" JJ Redick, essentially. A player that is an absolute weapon offensively, is able to move without the ball, shoot around screens. And this is the advantage of Cameron Johnson. I do want to say, he's a very good shooter. And when I say a very good shooter, I mean he's the type of shooter who can catch it and shoot it extremely quickly for his size. He can shoot around screens. He can move with the ball and shoot off the dribble fairly well for his size. But he's the type that can run around all over the floor, cut behind a screen, catch the ball, and let it go within half a second and make a three. That's a huge advantage for a guy that's his size. So if we want to hope for the very, very best, that's what you hope for. You hope for a 6'9" JJ Redick. And what I mean by that is JJ Redick is not a great defender, but he's a defender that understands where he needs to be, and he's always in the right place at the right time. He's able to understand team defense very well, funnel guys into the rim protector, take charges, maybe isn't athletic enough to block shots or get up to contest, but is willing to put his body in danger to actually do the right thing in the right time. And that's the kind of thing you can hope out of Cameron Johnson. And if it works out in the way that clearly James Jones and Jeff Bauer thinks that it can work out, that's what he can turn into. And that could be a very, very, very effective player for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, it could. I guess we'll see. That's all I have to say on Cam Johnson, too. I'm rooting for the kid.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about another trade.
What's up, Blue Wire listeners? This is Jack from the Real_Sports podcast, a Snapchat sports pod. We recently ranked as the #1 sports podcast on all of iTunes, all of Apple. We cover all things from the NBA draft, from NBA free agency. We're working on MLB this summer as well as the NFL offseason. Catch me and my co-host Abe on the Real_Sports podcast, a Snapchat sports pod, a part of the wonderful Blue Wire podcast network.
So Woj dropped another bomb after these ones. We talked about it earlier. The Suns finally capitalized on the insane value that is the Milwaukee Bucks pick, the pick that we've tried to trade about 1,000 times on this podcast. And that was for Ty Jerome and Aron Baynes. This is to the Boston Celtics. There's a lot of drama around this current trade because supposedly Aron Baynes agreed to opt into the final year of his deal and agreed to do it at a lower price than he was initially offered. And under that deal, he was told that he would stay with the Boston Celtics with the potential of being traded later on in the season. And then the Celtics, Danny Ainge, of course, as we all know, has no heart, immediately traded Aron Baynes and got rid of him to the worst team in the NBA. It's hilarious, and I feel very bad for Aron Baynes, but I do like Aron Baynes as a player. But part of the weird thing about this is, we'll talk about Ty Jerome in just a second. Let's talk a little bit about Aron Baynes first. This likely means no more Richaun Holmes, right?
It absolutely does. No more Richaun Holmes. And we had heard rumors about that actually in the past week about how maybe this new management wasn't so fond of Holmes. I think various people in the media had hinted at it, but hadn't outright said why. But I think this is pretty clear indication that Holmes will be moving on.
And this was, I thought this Bucks pick would be used to get rid of Josh Jackson. I'll be honest. Josh Jackson's value is at a very, very, very low point. Maybe the lowest ever. And I thought we would use that Bucks pick to get rid of him. Instead, it was used to buy back into the draft after we traded a pick that could have potentially been used to get Ty Jerome. I'm not sure where he would have gone because Ty Jerome is another good shooter. Now, let's actually first focus on Aron Baynes. Now, Aron Baynes is likely going to be will be the backup center for the Phoenix Suns, assuming he wants to play here, because after what happened with Boston, it's possible he asks for a buyout or he asks to be moved immediately from the Phoenix Suns. He's a good player. He's a good defensive player. At least he's in the right place at the right time. He tends to get dunked on a lot. That's part of his reputation here. But he also started shooting threes in the last year and a half, and he's actually pretty good at corner threes. As awkward and weird as his form is, he's done a relatively good job of hoisting up corner threes with the Boston Celtics, and it's something that you can expect him to continue to do here with the Phoenix Suns. The weird part about this point of the draft was that it kind of changed the trajectory for the Phoenix Suns as far as cap space goes, right?
Yes, and this is what I wanted to talk about. We'll talk about Baynes as a player a little bit more in a second. But, back to where our reference point was, what we were thinking after that initial, after the Cameron Johnson selection. I was thinking, well, the Suns now have $21 million approximately in cap space. They are a Josh Jackson trade away from having either the space to go out and max D'Lo, or, as down as I was on that Cameron Johnson selection, I was thinking to myself, you could still have a kick-ass offseason if you go out with $28 million in cap space and if you envision 5 players, you've got Pat Bev and Ricky Rubio at point guard, you've got Thad Young, Mirotic, and Aminu at power forward. And $28 million is like just the perfect sweet spot where if you can go and get a package of any 2 of those 5 players, that's an awesome offseason. And then, of course, the Suns had to go and get Aron Baynes. However you may feel about Richaun Holmes, and I actually think Richaun Holmes is a better player than Aron Baynes, which, again, we can talk about in a minute. But the advantage of Richaun Holmes was that he only had a $1.6 million cap hold. You have his bird rights. You can go and sign him over the cap if you do choose to retain him. With Aron Baynes, you just took on $5 million in salary. The Suns are now back to about $14 million in cap space before trading away Josh Jackson. And it really hurts their flexibility in what they can do in free agency now. There's basically no way for us to go out and get D'Angelo Russell for a max contract unless, even if you waive and stretch Tyler Johnson, I think you would still be like $1 million short.
Now, I do want to point out, while you were talking, I just saw a tweet that says, an early indication is that the Phoenix Suns may buy out Aron Baynes and allow Baynes to join a contender of his choice. Yes. Yeah.
Whew.
This changes things a little bit.
It does change things. This changes things a lot because it's an indication that they still value that cap space, which was important to me. I don't think Baynes is a bad player. Like you mentioned, the theme of the night is that the Suns have been adding shooters. Baynes, another guy, 35% on catch and shoot threes, which for a center is pretty good. But, I think you can do better at the backup center position for less. And I think the Suns have bigger areas of need at point guard and power forward that if you keep Baynes and go into the offseason with or go into free agency with just $14 million in cap space, the Suns wouldn't be able to fill all the holes they have on the roster.
Right, and it did make me feel like from the beginning when T.J. Warren was moved and they attached an asset to get rid of him, it made me think they have a plan. They have a person in mind for free agency. And as the draft went on, once that Aron Baynes move was made, it felt like, well, maybe not. But now as we're seeing, if that buyout does occur, there's a potential for a buyout to count very little against our cap. There's even the potential for a buyout to count basically not at all against our cap if you just agree to let him go and then sign for a similar amount. All that depends on what Aron Baynes can get in free agency. Generally, the way that buyouts work for players is their agents go through backdoor channels and find out what they can get in free agency. And then the team that is buying them out pays the difference between what they're offered and what they're owed on their on the rest of their cap. So assuming he can get a deal that's potentially even larger, it's possible the Suns can make out of this with very, very little left on the cap. And that would be a nice move for the Suns. It's essentially using that Bucks pick to draft Ty Jerome a year earlier than they would have been eligible to receive it. And Ty Jerome, we can talk about him now, was the point guard for Virginia that basically helped lead them to a national championship. A very good point guard, passing the ball, handling the ball, and shooting. He's 6'5". He doesn't look that big when you initially look at him. He plays point guard at 6'5", one of the better pick and roll ball handlers in the NBA draft this year, one of the best passers in the draft this year. I believe in the ESPN draft, they called him the second best passer after John Morant. He had the best assist to turnover ratio in the NCAA last year at, I believe it was 3.1 to 1, which is very, very good for a college player. And he is the type of player who can shoot off the dribble. He can also run around screens and shoot. He's a relatively good threat off the ball and is a pretty good fit if things can work out for him. This is actually one of the highest picks that the Suns have taken of a guard in a very long time. So it's hard to really predict exactly what's going to happen because, as we've seen in the past, the guards that we've taken have underperformed or they've been late picks and they're not exactly guaranteed to be good. This is one of the higher picks that we've used on a guard. What do you think about Ty Jerome?
I think it's interesting that you threw out the J.J. Redick comparison earlier with Johnson.
Yeah.
Because
right.
From a physical standpoint, Ty Jerome is J.J. Redick. He's 6'5".
Yeah, he's got all the same measurables.
Yeah, 6'5" with a 6'2.5" wingspan. So it's really rare that you see a negative wingspan. Like these are actual T-Rex arms for NBA standards. I mean, it's basically whenever a white guy gets drafted. And Ty Jerome are black, but that's what happens in the NBA, at least from a measurable standpoint. As you said, Ty Jerome's a good shooter. He's got a great assist to turnover ratio. My worry is, of course, only that the Suns have 4 point guards and none of them are starting caliber on the roster.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like Ty Jerome was taken 24th in this draft, but I think in last year's draft, he probably would have been an early second round to mid second round guy in the same realm as Elie Okobo or DeAnthony Melton. The Suns now have three of these young point guard prospects. Okobo's under contract for 3 more years. Melton is under contract for 1 more year, and we don't know what Jerome's contract is going to be yet. How do you even begin to make sense of that?
Yeah.
Who's going to be prioritized there? It just feels like the Suns, and this is again, I really like the idea if we can use a hindsight is 2020 approach of we could have just taken Culver at 6 and then, still traded for that 24th pick. And like I said earlier, taking Windler and you get the shooting that you got with Cam Johnson. But, getting a point guard before you fully even committed to Elie Okobo or DeAnthony Melton, it's not that I don't like Ty Jerome and the shooting that he provides. It just feels like now we're inevitably going to have to throw out one of these prospects and discard them to the side before we've even really given them a fair shake.
Yeah, Ty Jerome's going to be the one that they want because Ty Jerome is the one that James Jones drafted. Elie Okobo was drafted by Ryan McDonough. DeAnthony Melton was traded for by Ryan McDonough. I expect that James Jones is going to value the guy that he picked and the guy that is the highest of those picks, even factoring in what you talked about. He's still a higher pick technically than Elie Okobo. And someone picked by James Jones himself, and someone that clearly is a good shooter, something that we obviously see that James Jones loves to draft. But I think another point to make is throughout this draft, this offseason so far, it's clear to me that they're valuing a couple things, and that is high character guys who have won in the past. Now, you can look at Cam Johnson. He's a guy that played for a long time. He's clearly a guy who knows how to win, and he's one of the best interviews that you've seen. You can watch videos of him talking at his senior night. You can watch videos of him talking about how he feels about his place in the NBA, how he feels about how he did with North Carolina. You can watch Kobe White react to him being drafted at 11th. You can tell that he's made a great impression on him. You can also talk about Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome is a guy who won a national championship in the NCAA. He's a guy who's won in the past. He's older. He's also 21. This is a guy who was drafted basically 3 years older than Devin Booker was when Devin Booker was drafted. They're clearly valuing guys who are a little bit older, a little bit more experience, and have a lot of experience winning. They want to surround the Suns guys who spent the last 3, 4, 5 years losing with a bunch of winners to try and change this culture to a winning culture. So I think that it's most likely that they value Ty Jerome at this point because they're trying to rebuild that culture through a winning attitude and players who have that winning attitude. So I don't expect Elie Okobo to be that guy. I think that DeAnthony Melton is one of the most overrated players on the Suns roster. Yes, he's a good defender. He's a complete zero. He's a complete zero on offense. He does absolutely nothing. One of the worst offensive players in the NBA last season.
You're off your fucking rocker. Let's talk about something. Okay, I think winning culture is important, but you know what else is important? Having tools to be good basketball players. And if you look at the Suns roster right now, including factoring in all the guys they added tonight, out of all the guys that we expect to get major minutes next season in the rotation, there is exactly one good defender on the Suns' entire roster, and that is Mikal Bridges. I would say we have two good defenders, including DeAnthony Melton, but like you just said, we don't know if he's going to get any minutes.
Yeah, and he's only got 1 year left on his deal.
I get that he only has 1 year left on his deal, but if he's the best player, which I still think he is, you go with the best player. And, you know, we're splitting hairs here because these are all just backup point guard prospects. But we added shooters tonight. You know, that's what we did. Great. No defense. Still don't have a lead playmaking guard. Still have a hole at power forward if you are going to play Johnson there. You know, we don't know what the cap situation is going to be. So obviously I'll withhold my greater judgments until free agency. But it feels like in most situations how free agency would play out with free agents choosing to spurn a destination like Phoenix, that this is going to end up in disaster. You know, Ty Jerome, obviously with the wingspan, he's a one positional defender. I'll give him credit. He's good on the ball. And, you know, that's typical of guys who play in Virginia with that pack line defense. He's good at pressuring defensively and gets a surprising amount of steals, given a guy who plays for Virginia, where usually they're a little more conservative. But he's still going to be bullied from a physical standpoint defensively at the NBA level. There's just no way around. Cam Johnson's going to get bullied physically at the 4. Devin Booker, we know flat out is a bad defender, and DeAndre Ayton, as underrated as we think he is from a perimeter standpoint, we know that he's a bad rim protector. So we can't just throw Mikal Bridges with his long arms out there for 40 minutes and, you know, tell him to sprint back and forth and cover the entire team.
We're definitely going to do that. But hold on. Power forward, defense, shooting, rebounding, point guard. Those are the major problems with the Suns. Those are called basketball if you put them all together. Did you expect them to solve all of these problems today? Because what they did is they addressed power forward and they addressed shooting and they potentially addressed a backup point guard situation. Yes, we still have defense. We still have rebounding potentially. We'll see how it works with Dario. I can't imagine he's going to be that much better than TJ Warren, but I do expect him to be better. And then we still potentially could help solve that point guard position in free agency. We did address power forward. We did address shooting. There's still more time left in this offseason. There's still more ways to solve these problems. But I will tell you this, there is absolutely no way we were going to solve all of these problems in a single offseason anyway. I do like that we added shooting. I do like that we addressed the power forward problem. And I do like that we have a legitimate path to potentially get a point guard. So I'm not overly angry with what happened tonight. I think that the Cam Johnson trade or pick, it's just completely shocking to me. He was not even close to being on my radar. He was as far off my radar as you can get. I just didn't expect it at all. But beyond that, I'm not overly angry with what happened so far today, as I expect more to go down going forward throughout this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to turn our attention to free agency, basically. I mean, now I'm waiting on the news of this Baynes thing. Because if the Suns keep Baynes, Then they have 14 million in cap space. You can get up to 21 if you trade Josh Jackson. Here's the other unfortunate thing is that you touched on, but I just want to reiterate. I was really hoping to use that Bucks pick to get off Josh Jackson's contract, and now it feels like we just can't do that.
Well, we can't.
Well, I mean, we literally can't do that, but now it feels like it's not worth it to trade one of our own future firsts to get rid of Josh Jackson. Like, just keep him for a year, and what's the worst that could happen? Bench him. That's fine. If, he gets arrested again, then whatever.
Well, then you better hope that other people value DeAnthony Melton as much as Suns fans do, because that's the likely type of person that they're going to pair with Josh Jackson to try and give a team a chance at two young guys, maybe Elie Okobo as well, to hit instead of just Josh Jackson, because we don't have really extra picks to send out anymore. And if we're going to send Josh Jackson, we're going to have to attach another asset to him. DeAnthony Melton's not the greatest asset because of that short contract, but he could be a player that contributes in the right role next year.
If Josh Jackson has no trade value, like let's just say we can't get him off. Let's say Baynes does not accept a buyout, or he does accept a buyout and the Suns, he doesn't give back any money. And the Suns have 14 million right now and you have to fill the rest of the holes. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's hard. That's when we pretend like we really, really, really like Ricky Rubio.
Yeah, and like I do like Rubio, but okay, so then you bring in Rubio, and now you've got Rubio and Tyler Johnson, cool. You've got no minutes for Ty Jerome, who you just spent a first-round pick on getting, and you've got no backup power forward except for Cameron Johnson, who can't play backup power forward. So that's sort of what I'm talking about. Like, we could get guys with that level of money, but it just feels like there's too much left for us to achieve, and we don't have any trade chips anymore, because one of the most appealing trade chips we have that had maybe some sort of actual value was TJ Warren, who we gave up for nothing. So I don't know.
Yeah. The great Jalen Rose says, happiness is a function of expectations. And I guess my expectation in this offseason, when looking at power forward, defense, shooting, rebounding, and point guard as our major holes, is solving maybe 3 out of 5 of them. And not solving, just improving maybe 3 out of 5 of them. And then just improving enough to actually get good enough to actually have a watchable team next season. So I guess my expectations were already set kind of low because of how difficult it is to improve 5 different aspects of basketball in a single off season for a team that won 19 games. So I guess it's not a huge surprise for me. And how much I value shooting, Sam. I talk about it all the time, and I just like that we have shooters now, and I'm interested to see what this team looks like with shooters around Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, and I just hope they don't catch whatever Ryan Anderson caught when he was on the team.
Well, first of all, Dario Saric, we didn't talk about, could go a number of ways. I think he could be the next Channing Frye or Ryan Anderson, and I'm afraid of, where he's going to fall on that spectrum.
Well, he's younger than Ryan Anderson.
He is younger than Ryan Anderson. He's still just not great laterally. I mean, that again, defensively, that's what I'm talking about. Another non-defensive asset. But with what you just said about, lowering expectations, I'm not targeting you. This is more a message to the general Suns community. But it feels to me like heading into this draft, we had pretty fucking high expectations of James Jones. Like, I feel like I've been hearing a lot of pro James Jones propaganda, and I'm pretty fed up tonight. I don't like this idea of backtracking suddenly because we didn't take the guy that, the common sense guy that everyone was saying to take. And now we're going to backtrack and say, oh, that's okay. We're okay with not really improving. We didn't expect to improve anyway. I'm pretty ticked off at James Jones right now, and this is not a good start to his regime. He has to really earn back the trust with some good moves in free agency, because I'm trying to be positive tonight. I'm trying to be rational mostly, but I can't spin this positively in many ways.
Yeah, and free agency is earlier than it's ever been. It's going to be at the last day of June instead of the first day of July. So we have not that long. We probably have one more. We do. We have one more podcast before our free agency, and we can go over some options there. Of course, if you haven't already, take a look at our YouTube channel. We've gone over some free agency options, and we may have another video coming to you soon on that front. Do you have any specific free agents that you've thought about now that the draft has gone down that would be a good fit with this team?
I mean, if they have 14 million, like let's say in the worst case they only have that 14 million, I'm almost tempted to say, I know you took him with the 11th pick, but fuck Cam Johnson, play him like 10 minutes per game the first year, because if he plays at the 4, he's going to get bullied. Dario Saric, if you talk to T-Wolves fans, is more of a 6th man anyway. And go out and get Thad Young or Aminu or Mirotic. Just go hard after the power forward now and let Tyler Johnson be your starting point guard and Ty Jerome or whatever other rookie be the backup and just go with that. You're still going to improve that way. You're still going to improve that way. You actually get a defensive minded player in there in the front court. You've got two guys at the 4 who can actually rebound. As long as Saric is willing to play the sixth man role, you can bring Cam Johnson along slowly. I would be open to that. That's probably the most appealing thing to me right now. If you have a little bit more money, like if you find a way to get off Josh Jackson's contract, then I guess there's a variety of things we could do. I don't know. Maybe you could target like a backup 4 to play behind Saric, because that's my main worry right now. Cam Johnson can play the 4. I mean, we just had a full season sample size to tell us TJ Warren can't play the 4 as a tweener. Why would we try this again? So if it has to be a guy like, use a little bit less money and go out and get Taj Gibson, get JaMychal Green, Dante Cunningham, just get someone who's serviceable at that position. And then obviously I want point guard to be fixed. But, if this is the situation we're in, Tyler Johnson really might be our starting point guard next year.
I agree. And there's not a lot of really, really excellent options at a low price. The ones that everyone wants to talk about is Patrick Beverley, and I just don't really think he's going to want to play for the Suns. I just don't really think that's going to happen. This is a guy that's going to have opportunities to play on contenders, likely for less than he can make on the Suns. And mind you, he's never really had a big contract in his career. But I think he's a guy that values winning very, very much, and I think that's what he's going to focus on when he looks into his free agency. Now, I know we've talked a little bit about Josh Jackson so far, but we should quickly cover a story that came out since our last podcast as well, where Josh Jackson is now going to court to fight a battle where the mother of his 4-year-old daughter is saying that he accidentally got his 4-year-old daughter high on marijuana while he was taking care of her and brought her back to her mom high. So this is the lowest that Josh Jackson's value has ever been. This is a 4th overall pick, a player that was looked at by a lot of people as a guaranteed to be a good player in the NBA. But a player that initially had character issues coming into the draft, or some concerns, let's say, around his character coming into the draft, and that's proven to be a problem when you add some money to it, let's say that. And now the Suns are trying to move him as they're trying to build a team with excellent culture, and it sure seems like that's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. Let's say they do try and move him. I'm not sure what it's going to take. It's possible we're going to have to give up significant assets to get rid of him. He does only have 1 year left on his contract, so it's possible a team will take a flyer on him for a late protected 2nd-round pick where we essentially get nothing. But I think it's very unlikely at this point. Do you think there's any chance that we can get rid of Josh Jackson at the lowest value he's ever been at?
I haven't looked extensively at other teams' cap sheets, so maybe I'll do that over the next few days. I think there's a chance. But his trade value is definitely the lowest it's ever been. Did you see the meme with it's got 2 pictures of Barney with
yes,
with one being that I can't even describe it, but yeah, Josh Jackson, his trade value is in the shitter right now. I would agree. It probably can't get too much for him, if anything at all.
Yep. It's very unfortunate, the demise of Josh Jackson. I wonder if he's going to keep his diary going next year so he can blame everyone else.
I forgot about that. I stopped reading that diary long ago.
It got a lot less interesting as it went on. Hey, Bull was finally selected, by the way.
Oh, yeah? Are we still...
Yeah.
Who's being taken right now?
Well, Bull was traded to Denver. So Denver will have Bull. This is the team that's really just taking risks on guys that are going late because of injury.
Talon Horton-Tucker, we're up to 48 right now. Talon Horton-Tucker went 46. He must have some serious character issues, because that's a guy I've seen and was projected in the 1st round for a long time. Any quickly, I guess, before we go, any winners around the league that you can point out?
Memphis. I mean, it's definitely Memphis. They had a draft that included Ja Morant and Brandon Clark.
Yeah, I agree. Memphis is the obvious choice. I haven't really been paying attention to the 2nd round here because we've been recording. So I can't see. I'll just quickly scan. I don't even know what all these trades are.
It's hard to keep track of at this point. All right, well, let's end it for now. We'll be back next week with all of the rumors, of course, surrounding free agency. And of course, if any trades go down between now and then, we'll be back next week to talk about it, likely midweek, and we'll break it all down for you. Thanks everyone for listening. Good luck to Cameron Johnson. Good luck to Aaron Baynes. Good luck to Ty Jerome.
You're going to need it.
The Phoenix Suns select Dario Saric. The Phoenix Suns select Ty Jerome. The Phoenix Suns select Cameron Johnson. The Phoenix Suns select not TJ Warren.
For the ones who get going when the going gets tough, and the ones who know we're tougher together. For the Pathfinders breaking new ground, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as fast access to experts and 24/7 customer support. Because we know you have people depending on you, so you can always depend on us. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.